Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world. This is our special episode number 23 as the last final warning message prior to the close of provision. Now, my only duty is that to proclaim this message, and let us continue again that statement to SR 187. It says, in order to make a proper application of the seven seals, we must have a better understanding of the heavenly sanctuary service. Now, I would like to focus first to the heavenly sanctuary service. We already read on Desire of Ages, page 77, saying, all the ceremonies of the feast were types of the work of Christ. So, all the ceremonies, the services, the earthly sanctuary were types of the work of Christ in the heavenly sanctuary. We already read in track number 3, page 13, saying, since earthly beings themselves, having never been in heaven, are naturally strangers to heaven's realities. 1 Corinthians 2 verse 9. Then in order for God to make heavenly truth known unto them, He must reveal it by means of earthly realities with which they are familiar. Hence, through the sanctuary work on earth is seen the sanctuary work in heaven. Hebrews 9 verse 1 to 9. Indeed, the sanctuary above being the pattern of the one below, the services of the former are therefore definitely revealed in the services of the latter. So, here on Christ Object Lesson, page 133, it says, the significance of the Jewish economy is not yet fully comprehended. Truths vast and profound are shadowed forth in its rites and symbols. The gospel is the key that unlocks its mysteries. Through a knowledge of the plan of redemption, its truths are open to the understanding. Far more than we do, it is our privilege to understand these wonderful themes. We are to comprehend the deep things of God. Angels desire to look into the truths that are revealed to the people who with contrite hearts are searching the Word of God and praying for greater lengths and breadth and depths and heights of the knowledge which He alone can give. Christ Object Lesson, page 133. Here in Selected Messages, Book 1, page 232, Selected Messages, Book 1, page 232. Those who cherish the view that there was no Savior in the old dispensation have as dark a veil over their understanding as did the Jews who rejected Christ. The Jews acknowledged their faith in a Messiah to come in the offering of sacrifices which typified Christ. Yet when Jesus appeared, fulfilling all the prophecies regarding the promised Messiah and doing works that mark Him as the divine Son of God, they rejected Him and refused to accept the plainest evidence of His true character. The Christian church, on the other hand, who professed the utmost faith in Christ, in despising the Jewish system, virtually deny Christ, who was the originator of the entire Jewish economy. So, Jesus Christ is the originator of the entire Jewish economy. Here in Testimonies for the Church, volume 6, on 392. So, let's read the statement here. It says, volume 6, page 392, the gospel is given in precept in Leviticus. Implicit obedience is required now as then. How essential it is that we understand the importance of His Word. Volume 6, page 392. So the gospel is given in precept in Leviticus. Implicit obedience is required now as then. How essential it is that we understand the importance of this Word. So let us now study closely, brothers and sisters, the gospel as given in precept in Leviticus. Now, I would like to read 2SR 266. 2SR 266, it says, only by the gospel proclamation, through that spiritual house, can God save His people. So there is no other medium that our Almighty God can save humanity is only through the gospel proclamation, proclaimed by that spiritual house. And we know that that is pointing to the church recognized by God as His. And to us, our page 261, it says, to John was shown the true spiritual church of God in all ages, in a symbol of a woman. To us, our 261, to John was shown the true spiritual church of God in all ages, in a symbol of a woman. The Shepherd's Rod told us that written words can be misconstrued, but symbols cannot. To SR page 288. Written words can be misconstrued, but symbols cannot. Thus making it possible for both learned and unlearned to immediately distinguish the difference between truth and error. So, concerning the written word of God, it can be easily misconstrued. The Shepherd's Rod says the enemy has succeeded in confusing the written word of God. To SR page 10. While the enemy has succeeded in confusing the written word of God, God lightens the earth with His glory by these symbolic revelations, and by which He discloses the entire truth and uncovers the traps of the devil. Thus, through types and symbols, He makes wise the simple and confounds the prudent by showing that where there is no type, there is no truth. So, the only medium that we can defeat the enemy is to dwell on the symbolic revelations. And I remember the statement on track number 14 saying, on page 38, to know their God aright through timely truth is what brings life eternal. Track number 14, page 38. To know their church aright through timely truth is what brings life eternal. And the only medium that we can positively recognize the church recognized by heaven as His is through the symbolization of the woman, according to 2SR 261, right? Saying to John was shown the true spiritual church of God in all ages, meaning in all ages without any exemption, through the symbolization of a woman. So, the devil, the enemy of inspiration, will have a hard time to twist the meaning of the symbol. So, since written words can be easily misconstrued by the devil, but God lightens the earth with His glory through the symbolic revelations as well as through typological truths. And according to SR page 268, it says here, brothers and sisters, thus the woman represents a church that keep the commandments of God, moral law, and have the testimony of Jesus Christ, ceremonial law, or the plan of salvation revealed in the light of the spirit of prophecy, Revelation 12:17. So here the Shepherd's Rod made it so plain that the woman must represent the church that keep the commandments of God, which is represented by the moral law, and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. And it says ceremonial law, or the plan of salvation revealed in the light of the spirit of prophecy. We read several times in 2SR 187 saying, in sanctuary construction and service is revealed the plan of salvation. And that statement in 2SR 268 can be easily understood that the revelation of God concerning the plan of salvation is deposited by God into that church symbolized by the woman. So, one of the divine earmark that you can recognize, because to know their church aright through timely truth is what brings life eternal. And one of the medium that God employed so that we could recognize that church represented by the woman must be the church that keep the commandments of God, and at the same time, the entire plan of salvation had been deposited by God into that movement. And the plan of salvation was revealed through the sanctuary construction and sanctuary service, according to 2SR page 187. Now, let's read here in track number 3. Track number 3 on page 85. It says, wonderful indeed is the way in which God has worked out the plan of salvation and revealed it step by step as necessary. When in 1844, the investigative judgment of the dead and the ingathering of the first fruits of the living began, He did not leave his people in darkness. Concerning these events, the very first vision which Sister White received in 1844 was of the 144,000 first fruits, the servants of our God, who shall never taste death. See early writings, pages 14 to 15. And we know that the first vision that was shown by God to Sister White, that was on December 1844, immediately after the disappointment, according to such historical event, as stated in early writings from page 13. I would like to read. It says, "From this time up to December 1844, my joys, trials, and disappointment were like those of my dear Advent friends around me. At this time, I visited one of our Advent sisters, and in the morning, we bowed around the family altar. It was not an exciting occasion, and there were but 5 of us present, all women. While I was praying, the power of God came upon me as I had never felt it before. I was wrapped in a vision of God's glory and seemed to be rising higher and higher from the earth, and was shown something of the troubles of the Advent people to the holy city as narrated below my first vision." Early writings, page 13. So, the very first vision that was shown by God to Sister White is concerning the 144,000 living saints, and that was on the month of December, in December 1844. Now, since the work of Christ in the heavenly sanctuary is purely bookwork transaction, so that is the focal point of the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. So it says here in track number 3, page 6, "And since the books are obviously the focal point in the scene," so the focal point in the judgment scene are the books in the heavenly sanctuary. Track number 3, page 6. And it is called a bookwork transaction. So I would like to read again the statement here in White House Recruiter on page 20. "As the cleansing of the sanctuary in behalf of the dead is necessarily purely a book transaction, that is the reason for its taking place only in the heavenly sanctuary." So the statement, taking place only in the heavenly sanctuary, can be easily understood that the only things that takes place in the heavenly sanctuary is bookwork transaction. And the Shepherd's Rod called it as the first aspect of the judgment. Now let's read answer number 5, page 30. It says, "This is the first aspect of the judgment, and being only a bookwork," Daniel 7, verse 10, "a work that does not disturb either the dead in the graves or the living in the church, it takes place in heaven." So the first aspect of the judgment is only bookwork, and that occurrence takes place only in the heavenly sanctuary. Now, I would like to read track number 3. It says here on track number 3 on page, so let's read again the statement given by the Shepherd's Rod. It says here, "Those whose vision is clear on the truth of the harvest," track number 3, page 75, "those whose vision is clear on the truth of the harvest, as taught in the testimonies of the prophets and in the parables, will have a still clearer vision as we study the significance of the wave sheep, the significance of the wave loaves, and the Feast of Tabernacles." Illustrating our salvation in completeness. You see, the plan of salvation had been illustrated in completeness, brothers and sisters, through the sanctuary construction and service. But at this time, we focus first our attention to the sanctuary service. Now it says, illustrating our salvation in completeness, the harvest rites of the ceremonial system must therefore corroborate both the testimony of the prophets and the parables concerning the harvest, for all are inextricably bound up together. The ceremonies of the first and the second fruits of the grain must accordingly unfold the truth concerning the first and second fruits of humanity. Now, brothers and sisters, the plan of redemption, according to the Great Controversy, I would like to read again. Here in the Great Controversy, on page 489, so let's read the statement. It says here, "The intercession of Christ in man's behalf in the sanctuary above is as essential to the plan of salvation as was his death upon the cross. By his death, he began that work which after his resurrection, he ascended to complete in heaven. So, the plan of redemption had been laid down from the time when Jesus Christ was still on this earth at his first advent. And that work of the plan of salvation is completed in the heavenly sanctuary. And that's why here in the upper part it says, the sanctuary in heaven is the very center of Christ's work in behalf of man. It says the sanctuary in heaven is the very center of Christ's work in behalf of man. It concerns every soul living upon the earth. It opens to view the plan of redemption, bringing us down to the very close of time and revealing the triumphant issue of the contest between righteousness and sin. The Great Controversy, page 489. And at this time, the plan of redemption or the plan of salvation was revealed by God through the sanctuary service on the Levitical system, because he is the originator of that system. And it is illustrated by, according to track number 3, 3 harvest rites. The significance of the wave sheep, the significance of the wave loaves, as well as the significance of the Feast of Tabernacles, in which the shepherd's rod admonishes us the extra care must be exercised. Here in track number 3, page 78, it says, care therefore must be exercised, not to confuse the one truth with the other. So, we need to exercise extra care so that the truth would not be mixed up and only will lead into confusion. Now, I would like to read this reading on track number 3, third edition. So, here the statement, track number 3, third edition, page 97, saying, the first being the type, the second the prototype, the third the antitype. Track number 3, third edition, page 97. So, first the type, second the prototype, and third the antitype. And it is also stated in track number 9, saying threefold typification. It says here in track number 9 on page 72, saying a threefold typification in threefold accord with God's law of type, that where there is type, there must also be antitype. Track number 9 on page 72. So, to repeat again, brothers and sisters, let us distinctly separate the type and then the prototype and then the antitype. And we will go directly to humanity, because that occurrence in the Old Testament is only an illustration. So, the statement saying on page 75 in track number 3, the ceremonies of the first and the second fruits of grain must accordingly unfold the truth concerning the first and second fruits of humanity. So, let us now study closely the significance of the wave sheep and the wave loaves as it points out to humanity. Now, here in track number 3 on page, let's read the statement. Page 83, track number 3, page 83. And by the same token of logic, the wave sheep and the wave loaves must have a double application, each to the dead and to the living, together comprising the total fruits of the antitypical harvest. So, there are 3 harvests, right? Typical, prototypical, and then the antitypical harvest. So, the voice of inspiration says in track number 3, page 83, that the significance of that ceremony concerning the wave sheep and the wave loaves, it must be applied both, double application, each to the dead and each to the living. Concerning the dead, in this study, there are only 2 classes of dead saints as illustrated in Revelation 11, verse 1. Now let us read on track number 5 on page 109. It says, the temple and the altar, inanimate objects, must characterize the 2 classes of inanimate saints, the 2 classes of dead saints. So, the temple and the altar represents the two classes of dead saints. Therefore, the dead saints are divided into two classes, which is represented by the temple and the altar. And according to the Shepherd's Rod, the temple are those who died since from Adam up to 1844. Therefore, they are the first 5 seals. According to track number 5, 109 and 110. And the altar are those who will be resurrected on Daniel chapter 12, verse 1 and 2, which is those who died under the 6th seal. They are represented by the altar, according to the Shepherd's Rod. Therefore, we need now to study closely who are they, the prototypical first of the first fruits that pertains to the temple, and the prototypical first fruits that pertains to the temple. And who are they? The prototypical wave lobes that pertains to the temple. Because it says, each to the dead. The ceremonies of the waveship and the wave lobes must have a double application. First, each to the dead. And since there are two classes of dead saints, temple and altar, so we need now to study the waveship of the temple and the wave lobes of the temple, the waveship of the altar, and the wave lobes of the altar, as well as the waveship of the worshippers and the wave lobes of the worshippers. Do not forget that there are only 3 classes of saints to be judged in the holy place. And since the Word of God, the plan of redemption that had been laid down is in absolute, in perfect harmony, those that had been resurrected on the first advent of Jesus Christ are the holy ones that had been selected from the first 3 seals. The generation under the first seal, the generation under the second seal, and the generation under the third seal. Why 3? Because each of them are the prototypical waveship and prototypical wave lobes. The prototypical waveship and the prototypical wave lobes to the temple. The prototypical waveship and the prototypical wave lobes to the altar. And the prototypical waveship and the prototypical wave lobes to the worshippers. So I would like to read first early writings on page 184. It says, when Jesus, as he hung upon the cross, cried out, "It is finished," the rocks rent, the earth shook, and some of the graves were opened. When he arose a victor over death and the grave, while the earth was reeling and the glory of heaven shone around the sacred spot, many of the righteous dead, obedient to his call, came forth as witnesses that he had risen. Those favored rising saints came forth glorified. There were chosen and holy ones of every age, from creation down even to the days of Christ. So that is very plain. From creation, meaning from the first seal down to the third seal. So here we can easily discern the plan of redemption, that those that had been resurrected will serve as the prototypical sheep. Here in track number 3, let's read the statement given by the Shepherd's Rod. So here in track number 3 on page 85. So let's read. Track number 3, page 85. Just as Christ and those whom he raised and took with him became the prototypical sheep, betokening the ingathering of the first fruits, the 120 of those who are to be resurrected. So also when he entered upon his priestly ministration in the first apartment of the heavenly sanctuary, and presented himself and his trophies before his Father, they become the antitypical sheep, betokening the ingathering of the first fruits of those who are to be translated, the 144,000 living saints. In the light of this parallel, the spiritual condition of the 120 before the apostolic Pentecost is clearly seen to typify the spiritual condition of the 144,000 before the future Pentecost. Now, that paragraph, there are a lot of information that had been given, but at this time, I would like to just gradually explain the plan of redemption. So, the Shepherd's Rod made it so plain that those that had been resurrected, by Jesus Christ, they are the prototypical, both of them, prototypical wave shape, prototypical wave lobes. Remember, brethren, that according to 2SR 237, it says, 2SR page 237, if God worked on the 3-hour schedule with the crucifixion of Jesus, 2SR 237. If God worked on the 3-hour schedule with the crucifixion of Jesus, see chart on page 22, and the same rule was followed in the period called day, then he certainly would not follow another rule in the period called night. The reason he has followed that particular rule is to present to his church the exact time of her history by periods. So there is 3-hour schedule, and the particular or the principal reason why God made such particular rule, 3-hour schedule, is to present to his church, that is the 11th hour church, because according to 2SR 234, the truth of the parable has never been understood by any other company except the 11th hour call. So the principal reason why Jesus Christ followed the particular rule, 3-hour schedule, is to present to his church, brothers and sisters, the exact history, her history by periods. Now, first of all, in this study, we can easily discern that the statement in the Bible here in Matthew 27, saying, Matthew chapter 27, on verse 52 and 53, and the graves were opened, and many bodies of the saints who sleep arose, and came out of the graves after his resurrection, and went into the holy city and appeared unto many. So let us distinctly separate those that had been resurrected after the resurrection of Jesus Christ and those that had been resurrected together with Jesus Christ. Because those that had been resurrected together with Jesus Christ, they are the first of the first fruits, the wave sheep. But those that had been resurrected after Christ's resurrection, 3-hour schedule, 9 a.m., they are represented by the prototypical first fruits. And the mere fact that they are resurrected at 9 a.m., because that is the 3-hour schedule, to indicate that they also signify the wave lobes on earth, represented by the apostles, by which they received the Pentecostal power at 9 a.m. or in the ancient timepiece of clock, that is 3rd hour. So the same hour, brothers and sisters. Now it says here in track number 3, page 80, and since the wave ship was a figure of Christ and of those who arose with him as the first of the first fruits of the dead. So those that had been resurrected. So here we can now distinctly separate. Jesus Christ is the type. Those that had been resurrected together with Jesus are the prototype. But those that had been resurrected in that very day there are 3 hours interval or 3-hour schedule. The first resurrection is those who had been resurrected together with Jesus Christ, according to our reading, and they serve as the first of the first fruits or the prototypical wave sheep. But there are three classes of first fruits. The first fruits under the first seal, the first of the first fruits under the first seal, the first of the first fruits under the second seal, and the first of the first fruits under the third seal. And those who had been resurrected at 9 a.m., they are represented by the wave lobes, indicating that the entire first fruits had been completely gathered. So that is the significance, brothers and sisters. And we know that this sanctuary service did not begin not until in October 22, 1844. And that is the reason that, according to the Shepherd's Rod, here on 2SR page 191, that the word hereafter, it says 2SR 191, therefore the word hereafter in Revelation chapter 4 verse 1 means from the time of the vision pointing forward to 1844. 2SR page 191. Now let's go back again to the reading on the old symbolic code. 3 symbolic code number 5 and 6, page 12 and page 13. So it says, are the first fruits of the dead also of the living? The absolute answer is that no. The first fruits of the temple are those that had been resurrected under the generation of the first seal. The first fruits of the altar are those that had been resurrected under the generation of the second seal. But the first fruits of the living, which is the worshippers, they are those that had been resurrected in the generation under the third seal. And the mere fact that Elijah is under the third seal confirms that the first fruits that had been resurrected under the third seal is the prototypical first fruits of the worshippers. So here, we will gradually show to you how God revealed the entire plan of redemption through the sanctuary construction and service, as illustrated on the ceremonial system, as well as the occurrence on the first advent of Jesus Christ, more particularly on that very year, 31 AD. On 31 AD, brothers and sisters, the very year by which Jesus Christ was crucified, according to our reading in the Great Controversy 489. That is the time that the plan of redemption had been carried out from crucifixion to resurrection to ascension, completed in the heavenly sanctuary, according to the Great Controversy, page 489. So let us read again the statement here in 3 Symbolic Code, number 5 and 6, pages 12 and page 13. It says, if Christ is the first fruits of the dead, is He not also the first fruits of the living? Although the answer, if the question is concerning Jesus Christ is all in all. According to tract number 8, page 46, it says, wherefore says Christ, I'm reading tract number 8, page 46. Wherefore, says Christ, I am the root and the offspring of David, and the bright and morning star. Revelation 22, verse 16. Bearing out that He is all and in all. So, Jesus Christ can represent all. That is concerning Jesus Christ. But in order for us to understand more completely the plan of redemption, I remember that reading in one SR Pocket Edition saying, in page 56, in one SR Pocket Edition, the eye focus to the light of heaven. So our eye should be focused only to the light in the heavenly sanctuary. The eye focus to the light of heaven sees that Jehovah God, the super artist, has employed in the scriptures every method known to mankind by which to unfold the wondrous structure of redemption. You see, brothers and sisters, every method known to mankind to reveal the wondrous structure of the plan of redemption. So, we already read that it was revealed by sanctuary construction and sanctuary service, according to 2SR, page 187. So, we are now focusing the offering of the wave sheep and the wave lobes in the heavenly sanctuary and its significance. Now, let us read 3 Symbolic Code, number 5 and 6, page 13. It says, this query is answered in tract number 3, the harvest, in the illustration on page 44, of which the barley sheaf of the first fruits is pictured in type and antitype. That is, the ceremonial sheaf of barley prefigured the resurrection of Christ, the first fruits including those who arose with Him. These resurrected ones constituted the spiritual sheep which, at the beginning of the judgment of 1844, was offered before the Father as a sheep offering of the living first fruits. Now, brothers and sisters, we know that all of them are living first fruits because all of them were immortalized. Now, I would like to read here in tract number 3, tract number 3 on page 84. It says here, the reader will remember that those who arose with Christ on the 18th day of the first month, follow the chart on page 55, were immortalized and received into heaven as the antitypical sheep, pointing to the ingathering of the fruits that shall never die. So all of them had been immortalized. So that is why, brothers and sisters, they are called the living first fruits. Now, let us distinctly separate, brethren, the wave sheep that is intended to the dead and the wave lobes that is intended to the dead. Do not forget the statement that the wave sheep and the wave lobes must have a double application, each to the dead and each to the living. Tract number 3, page 83. Let us read again the statement. And by the same token of logic, the wave sheep and the wave lobes must have a double application, each to the dead and to the living, together comprising the total fruits of the antitypical harvest. And do not forget that according to tract number 3, on page 80, it says, From these facts, it can more clearly be seen that those whom Christ took with him were the living wave ship and the only one that has been offered in the heavenly sanctuary. So they are the only one that has been offered in the heavenly sanctuary. And that as one raised from the dead, they are the first fruits of the dead. Whereas as one ever living before the Father, they are the living wave ship of the first fruits of the living, the 144,000 servants of God, who sequentially precede the second fruits and the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, let's focus our attention, brothers and sisters. They are the only ones that had been offered in the heavenly sanctuary. Who are they? Those that had been resurrected on April 18. And Moses was already resurrected. Therefore, Moses cannot be a part that had been offered, because Moses is a part of the four beasts, the representatives. And that is Moses, Abel, Elijah, and Enoch, the four beasts, as the representatives of that judicial proceedings. And the two resurrected saints represented to the two classes of dead saints, those who died natural death and martyr, according to 2 SR 195 and 196. And Elijah represents the first fruits, the 144,000, and Enoch, the great multitude. So, since our subject is concerning the wave ship and the wave lobes, the shepherd's rod made it so plain that they are the only ones that had been offered in the heavenly sanctuary. Who are they? The one that had been resurrected on April 18, 31 AD. They are the only one that had been offered in the heavenly sanctuary, according to the shepherd's rod. Now, when was such offering begun? According to the shepherd's rod here in 3 Symbolic Code number 5 and 6, page 13, it says, these resurrected ones constituted the spiritual ship which at the beginning of the judgment of 1844 was offered before the Father as a ship offering of the living first fruits. Now, we need to study closely, brothers and sisters. The statement is 1844. To repeat again, does the 1844 here Gregorian calendar? Now, if it is Gregorian calendar, Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place October 22. And of course, in Gregorian calendar, the last month is December 31. And then January 1 is another year. So, if that calendar is Gregorian, then are we saying that the wave ship had been offered in the month of October? Remember, there was no offering of the wave ship before Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place, before the veil was lifted. And it was lifted in October 22, 1844. Now, if we will be saying that 1844 in 3 Symbolic Code 5 and 6, page 13 is Gregorian calendar. Now, in what month by which the ship had been offered? Is it October? Is it November? Is it December? Because that is the last 3 months, remaining months to complete the year 1844. Of course, the next year, January 1, is 1845. Absolutely, that 1844 in 3 Symbolic Code 5 and 6, page 13, cannot be Gregorian calendar. Otherwise, Jesus Christ is offering the wave ship, which is contradictory to the offering of the wave ship, by which He is the one who is originator of that ceremonial system. And Jesus Christ cannot contradict His own, brothers and sisters. So, the voice of inspiration says, I would like to read first here in 3 Symbolic Code, and then let's read track number 3. It says here in 3 Symbolic Code 13 Symbolic Code 5 and 6, page 23. 13 Symbolic Code 5 and 6, page 23. Take next the wave ship, which is typical of the resurrection of Christ, having to be offered during the Passover week, and no other day but on the morrow after the Sabbath, the first day of the week, which is we commonly call it Sunday. So that is very plain. What celebration by which the wave ship is offered? Only during the Passover week. And there is no Passover week in the month of October. There is no Passover week on the month of November. There is no Passover week in the month of December. Then absolutely, 1844 in 3 Symbolic Code, number 5 and 6, page 13, must be Bible calendar. Because in Bible calendar, the year of this appointment is 1843. Now, I would like to read to you here in track number 6 on page 30. It says here in track number 6 on page 30, the key of the interpretation to this honey is found in Revelation chapter 10, verse 10. And I took the little book, says John, out of the angel's hand, and ate it up. And it was in my mouth sweet as honey. And as soon as I had eaten it, my belly was bitter. This honey sweetness represents the joy that came to the believers in William Miller's time through their wholehearted belief that the Lord was coming in the fall of 1843 AD to take them to their home in the land that is very far off, where their eyes would see the King and His beauty. Isaiah 33 verse 17. But as the day passed and the expected event failed to materialize, then overwhelming disappointment as depicted by the little book turning bitter came to everyone who, in honest expectancy, yearningly anticipated that long hoped for journey through the starry heavens to the city Foursquare, the capital of the earth made new. So, would you think that Shepherd's Rod was mistaken saying that the disappointment took place in the year 1843? No, because that 1843, that is the Bible calendar. And that's why in one is our packet edition on page, it says here, on page 71, in some instances, the coincidental events may, according to our present calendar, appear to be a year ahead or a year behind, due to the fact that the first month of the Mosaic calendar falls in the fourth month of the present calendar year. So, that is very plain that the Gregorian calendar and the Bible calendar, in some instances, 1 year behind and 1 year ahead. Therefore, in 1844, perfectly portrayed that statement in one SR Packet edition, page 71, that the Bible calendar is 1 year behind with the Gregorian, 1843, and the Gregorian is 1844. And the Gregorian calendar is 1 year ahead with the Bible calendar. And we were so thankful that God graciously placed in our hands the restoration of such Bible creation calendar. Now, we already firmly established that the worship is offered before the presence of the Lord during the Passover week. And here on the Great Controversy, I would like to read on page 399. It says here, the statement saying, these types were fulfilled not only as to the event, but as to the time. So I would like to read again the statement. These times were fulfilled not only as to the event, but as to the time. For example, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Now let's read track number 3. Track number 3 on page 78 and page 79. So it says here, track number 3, pages 78 and page 79. The worship was to be offered on the morrow after the Sabbath. That is on the first day of the week, now commonly called Sunday. This offering was to be presented not on a special day of the month, but rather on a special day of the week, before the sickle was put to the grain and gathered into sheaves. Leviticus 23, verse 11 and 14. Coming just at the right time in the season of the first fruits, the Passover week was the period in which the worship was usually offered before the Lord. Its ritual, prophetically projecting Christ, the antitype of the worship. Jesus Christ, and also those who have been resurrected on that day, April 1831 AD, they were the antitype. If the comparison is the literal grains, the barley and the wheat. So the type is the literal grains, and Jesus Christ and those that had been resurrected, they were the antitype. But when it comes to humanity, Jesus Christ is the type, those that had been resurrected is the prototype, and those who are to be resurrected and those who are to be translated is the antitype. And that is why it is called the antitypical harvest. Those that had been already resurrected, they are called the typical harvest. Now, I would like to read again the statement in track number 3, page 83. It says, track number 3, page 83. And by the same token of logic, the worship and the wave loaves must have a double application, each to the dead and to the living, together comprising the total fruits of the antitypical harvest. So the antitypical harvest pertains only to two classes of saints, resurrected and translated. But it points out to the saints that were still lying unconscious in their graves to be resurrected, and to the saints to be translated. But they that had been already resurrected, they were the prototypical harvest. And Jesus Christ is the typical harvest, or the type. Jesus Christ, the resurrection of Jesus Christ is the type. Those that have been resurrected on that very day are the prototypical. And then those who are still lying unconscious in their graves, and those who will be translated to heaven without seeing death, they are represented by the antitypical harvest, by which the wave sheep and the wave lobes is no longer the literal grain. The wave sheep represent those that had been resurrected at 6 a.m. and the wave lobes, those that had been resurrected at 9 a.m. Actual human being, no longer grains. But when the comparison is between grains and human being, the grains, the literal grains, barley and wheat, are the type, and those that had been resurrected on the first advent of Jesus Christ, they are the antitype, as well as Jesus Christ is also the antitype. But when it comes to humanity, it was divided into 3 divisions. Jesus Christ is the type, those that had been resurrected on that day, the prototype to serve as wave sheep and wave lobes. The wave sheep, those that had been resurrected at 6 a.m., and the wave lobes, those that have been resurrected at 9 a.m., and the antitype are those represented by the temple, altar, and worshippers. And since in the heavenly sanctuary, Jesus Christ is the high priest, He is the one to offer the wave sheep and the wave lobes. Therefore, Jesus Christ could no longer be a part of the prototypical, because He is the high priest that will offer the prototypical wave sheep, the prototypical wave lobes. So our attention is focused to the heavenly sanctuary, brothers and sisters. So, I think we need now to start in our diagram so that we could be able to comprehend, brothers and sisters, this wonderful structure of the plan of redemption. Now, I would like to go back again to the reading in track number 3, 1934 edition. So let's read again the statement given by the Shepherd's Rod. Page 66 and page 67. Track number 3, 1934 edition, pages 66 and 67. It was during the 40 days of Christ's personal presence with His disciples, from His resurrection to His ascension, that the first fruits, the 120, were gathered in. His presence among them has a deep meaning, and it should be understood by every disciple of Christ. If these 40 days have no other significance, they certainly bear the thought of His personal care over the ingathering of the fruit. But shall we say this vigilance was true only during His short stay with His laborers in that particular time? Such thought would not entertain the truth of His being the only Savior from everlasting to everlasting. Lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. Matthew 28 verse 20. Is He not the same vigilant Savior of the Old Testament as well as the New? Indeed, moreover, His personal care in gathering His people in those 40 days, which we see to be a type of His supervision of the ingathering of the fruits in every generation, should therefore reveal that He is the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world, and the Good Shepherd in all ages. You see, the statement is very plain that the 40 days from Christ's resurrection to His ascension should serve as a type not only in one generation but in all generations. And, brothers and sisters, to repeat again, according to the Shepherd's Rod in 2SR page 201 and 202, the generations were illustrated by 7 seals. And it says here in 2SR 201 and 202, as the evidence brought forth cannot be questioned, that with the book of seals the judgment opened, and it began with the righteous who live upon the earth first and ends with the last. It is positive that the 7 seals spread over the entire world history. Consequently, they include every saint since the world began. The number 7 bears the same evidence. And in 2SR 198, it says, the lamps of fire, 7 in number, present before the throne, represent completeness of truth of God, present truth revealed to every generation since the world began, by which we are judged. 2SR page 198. But the fact is that the 7 seals are divided only into 3. compacted into three. Although it is four, but we are talking about the three classes of saints to be judged in the holy place. And that is the reason that there are only three generations by which the resurrection on April 1831 AD, that Sunday, on the first advent of Jesus Christ, together with the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Why three? Because these three represents the three classes of saints to be judged in the holy place: the temple, the altar, and the worshippers. So, that is very plain, brothers and sisters, and hoping that we could gradually grasp the true meaning of this plan of redemption. Because the fourth one, the great multitude, no, they could no, God commanded that they should be no longer to be measured, meaning investigated in the holy place, as is stated in tract number 5, page 110. And we will explain it later, the reason why they will no longer be to be investigated in the holy place. But let us first focus our attention to these three, brothers and sisters, by which represented by wave sheep and wave lobes. The wave sheep and the wave lobes to the temple is those who have been resurrected at in the first seal. The wave sheep and the wave lobes for the altar are those that had been resurrected under the second seal. And the wave sheep and the wave lobes to the worshippers are those that had been resurrected under the third seal. And we will now focus our attention to the occurrence in the heavenly sanctuary, from the first to the last offering of the wave sheep and the wave lobes. Now, remember, brethren, that concerning such service, sanctuary service, in the administration of Christ, when it pertains to the dead, the occurrence takes place only in heaven. Whereas, when the judgment that pertains to the living begins, the heavenly as well as the earthly temple or the earthly sanctuary is thus affected. Now, let us read tract number 5 on page 109. It says here, the investigative judgment of the dead consequently takes place in the heavenly temple only, whereas the investigative judgment of the living takes place in the heavenly as well as in the earthly temple. So, concerning the judgment of the living takes place in the heavenly as well as in the earthly temple. Tract number 5, page 109. Therefore, from the time when the wave sheep and the wave lobes have been offered in the period of the judgment that pertains to the dead, the only proceedings is in the heavenly sanctuary. There is no proceedings that takes place on this earth, on the earthly sanctuary. So let us now begin, brothers and sisters. The very first offering that had been offered by Jesus Christ, brothers and sisters, remember, the resurrection of Jesus Christ is the type. And what is the statement in the Great Controversy, page 399? These types were fulfilled not only to the event, but as well as to the time. So it must be perfectly matched and exactly fits. So it is very important to understand the type so that we could easily discern the prototype as well as the antitype. So let's begin on 237. The wave sheep and the wave lobes. So we'll show to you this diagram. And this diagram is exclusively taken from the Shepherd's Rod publications. So you see, brothers and sisters, 31 AD, April 31 AD, and May 31 AD. That is Bible. The important is April 18, the arrow on April 18, and May 27. Now, that is the type according to the Shepherd's Rod. We already read in tract number 3, 1934 edition, page 66 and 67. So, the type is the resurrection of Jesus Christ and the ascension of Jesus Christ. 40 literal days, brothers and sisters. And these occurrences is heavenly designed, brothers and sisters. If the Bible creation calendar had not been restored, we will have a hard time to explain that statement in 3 Symbolic Code 5 and 6, page 13. First, there might be possibility that you will say that 1844 is Gregorian calendar. And that's why if you will ask, if that 1844 in 3 Symbolic Code 5 and 6, page 13 is Gregorian calendar, and Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place October 22, 1844. Which of these last 3 months remaining in the year 1844, by which the wave sheep had been offered by Jesus Christ in the presence of God the Father? Is it October? Is it November? Is it December? Now, brothers and sisters, not even one of these 3 months. Otherwise, Jesus Christ is working against what he had been established in the Jewish economy. The Voice of Inspiration says that Jesus Christ was the originator of that the inter-Jewish economy. 1 SM page 232. And all the ceremonies, types of the work of Christ in the heavenly sanctuary. Desire of Ages, page 77. And since only on the Passover week, on the first month, April, by which the worship must be offered, therefore, in the heavenly sanctuary as well, it must be on during the Passover week, on the first month. It cannot be on the second month, third month, fourth month, fifth month, sixth month, seventh month, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Only on the first month, during the Passover week, by which the worship is offered in the presence of the Lord. And Jesus Christ, according to Hebrews chapter 8, verse 1, being our high priest in the heavenly sanctuary, built by God, not by man. Therefore, Jesus Christ must offer the worship in the presence of God the Father on the very day, brothers and sisters, by which He Himself ordained. I remember the statement in Answerer number 3 on page 9 and page 11, page 10. Answerer number 3, page 9 and page 10. Thus the all-knowing one, Answerer number 3, page 9 and 10. Thus the all-knowing one, He who created the heavenly bodies and knows the very moment He set them in motion to govern the day, the month, and the year, decreed that the holy feast be observed in the very month and on the very day in which they were first ordained. So, that is very plain, brothers and sisters. Now, let us now, do we have done, you saved the PowerPoint concerning when would be the worship will be offered in the presence of the Lord. We need first to establish the divine principle. Number one, you still remember that the worship is offered not on the special day of the month, but on a special day of the week. That is on the first day of the week, which we commonly call Sunday. There is no other day. The worship cannot and will not be offered on Monday, neither on Tuesday, neither on Wednesday, neither on Thursday, neither on Friday, neither on Saturday. There is only one specific day by which God commanded His people that the worship must be offered only on the first day of the week, which is Sunday. According to the shepherd's rod, according to the Bible, according to the spirit of prophecy, by which we already read in tract number 3 on page 78. The worship was to be offered on the morrow after the Sabbath, that is on the first day of the week, now commonly called Sunday. This offering was to be presented not on a special day of the month, but rather on a special day of the week. Tract number 3, page 78. What is the principle number 2? The divine principle number 2 is that the worship must be offered in the presence of the Lord on the first Sunday after the 15th. Or in other words, there is no offering of the worship on the 15th. Because the divine principle must be, the worship must be offered on the first Sunday after the 15th. Because the 15th is the first Passover day. I would like to or the first day of the Passover week. Let's read 2SR page 23. It says, 2SR page 23. The 14th day of the first month that year was on Wednesday. 2SR page 23. The 14th day of the first month that year was on Wednesday. And the day ended at sunset, even the first day of the Passover feast, 15th day of the month. So what is the first day of the Passover feast? 15th. It will always fall on the 15th. But that 15th will not always fall the same day. So the beginning of the Passover feast must begin on the 15th, regardless of that day. So, the worship must be offered in the presence of the Lord, or the worship must be presented in the presence of the Lord, the first Sunday after the 15th. Now, we already give to you, let us show to them, the 7 patterns of Bible calendar, from pattern number 1 to pattern number 7, by which the worship is offered. And to repeat again, concerning the week, there is no other day by which the worship must be offered. It must be on Sunday. And concerning the month, it must be the first Sunday after the 15th. So, it cannot be offered on the 15th day. So, let us look at the 7 patterns by which the worship is offered. So, we have that 7 patterns. Pattern number 1, the worship is presented before the Lord on the 5th day of the feast. and that is April 19, Sunday. So if the year is pattern number 1, so the offering of the wave sheep must be on the 5th day of the feast, and that is April 19. But if the year is pattern number 2, that is the 2nd day of the feast, April 16, Sunday. And that pattern is very noticeable because that is the only one that had been recorded in the Exodus movement. 2nd day of the feast. Do not forget that, because remember, brothers and sisters, one of the reasons why God uses only 2 kinds of cereals, according to 2SR 234. Why only 2 kinds of cereals? Why not 5? Because God wants to draw our attention to the first and the last call. The first call, Israel after the flesh going out of Egypt. And the last call is spiritual Israel going out of Egypt. And it's very important because it points out to the 144,000 living saints. Sister White and Betty Hotep expected to be among the living saints, but all of them died. And he himself declared clearly in 2SR 275 that that predicted event, the perfect fulfillment of Abraham in its antitype going out of Egypt, was still future in the days of Betty Hotep. But he himself commanded his people, or commanded God's people, that we need to prepare for that event. 1SR page 64. What event? The departure from Egypt. And we read yesterday, according to 2TG, number 41, on page 3, it says, I am, however, certain that God will not keep us ignorant of the things we ought to know. If it becomes necessary for us to know ahead of time the day and hour of the purification of the church, the antitypical Passover, we will be told. Yes, we shall know at least as much in advance as Moses knew about the Passover in his day. So, there must be comparison. The revelation, the information that will be given by God to the last generation of men, the 144,000 living saints, the information that will be given by God to them concerning the antitypical Passover is much in advance than the information given by God to Moses in the type. So the antitype is more broader in scale, as is stated in track number 14 on page 6. So let us go back again, brothers and sisters, the 7 patterns of the Bible calendar by which the wave sheep must be offered. So pattern number 1, that is the 5th day of the feast, by which Sunday is April 19. Pattern number 2, 2nd day of the feast, by which Sunday is April 16. Then pattern number 3, 6th day of the feast, by which Sunday is April 20. And then pattern number 4, 3rd day of the feast, by which Sunday is April 17. Pattern number 5, 7th day of the feast, by which April 21 is Sunday, or Sunday is April 21. And then pattern number 6, 4th day of the feast, by which Sunday is April 18. That is the Bible pattern calendar on the year by which Jesus Christ was crucified and resurrected. That is pattern number 6, by which Jesus Christ was resurrected on Sunday, which is April 18. And then we have pattern number 7, 8th day of the feast, by which Sunday fall on April 22. And that is why, by Bible pattern calendar, you can immediately discern that that occurrence in the life of Apostle Paul that had been recorded in Acts of the Apostles on page, let's read the occurrence here. In Acts of the Apostles on page, I think, 389. Paul last journey to Jerusalem. Paul last journey to Jerusalem. It says, Paul greatly desired to reach Jerusalem before the Passover, as he would thus have an opportunity to meet those who should come from all parts of the world to attend the feast. Can you imagine, brothers and sisters? This is already the last journey of Apostle Paul to Jerusalem. And if you will look at can we see the Bible pattern on AD, our chart, so we could show to the brethren that through the Bible pattern, we can easily discern, brothers and sisters. So let me see, pattern number 7. For example, it might be 60 AD. Pattern number 7. So, can you imagine, brothers and sisters, on that year 60 AD, the last journey of Apostle Paul to Jerusalem, the apostles were observing the Holy Feast, the Passover week. So that is an erroneous doctrine to say that the Holy Feast had been crucified in the death of Jesus Christ. If that is the case, who is more knowledgeable? It must be the apostles because they are the living witness of that crucifixion. Think it thoroughly, brothers and sisters. The apostles, they are the living witness of that crucifixion. So if the thought is that the Holy Feast had been crucified and nailed to the cross, then of course the apostles will no longer observe the Holy Feast. But it is contrary to the Bible and contrary to the spirit of prophecy. Who trodden underfoot the Holy Feast? The papacy. During the Dark Ages, I would like to read the statement here in 2TG number 6. Let's read the statement given by the Shepherd's Rod. 2TG number 6, pages 20 and page 21. And it is taken from Hosea chapter 2, verse 8 to 12. From these verses, 2TG number 6, page 20 and 21. From these verses, we see that it was just such a departure from God that caused the church in the early Christian era to lose her path and all her possessions, including her feast days, her new moons, her Sabbaths, and all her solemn feasts. You see, brothers and sisters, it says all her solemn feast. Why is it that it was taken from them? Because of their departure from God. It says here, this is exactly what happened when the dark ages of religion began. The pagans in whose clutches the church fell were no more to blame for the church going into darkness than were the Chaldeans of destroying Judah and her temple. The real blame falls on the church herself, and this should be a lasting lesson to each of us that we should never again have illicit connection with the world, should never depart from the Lord. It's hard to imagine, brothers and sisters, to say that the Holy Feast had been nailed and crucified, while the Bible declared clearly that it is the exceeding great horn. It is the papacy that abolished the Holy Feast. But the Holy Feast cannot be abolished in the possession of the early Christian church if they remain faithful. But it was because of their departure from God, according to the Shepherd's Rod. But the absolute fact is that, no, it was not destroyed. It was not abolished, the Holy Feast. The only thing that had been abolished is the sacrificial offerings, the burnt offerings, the sacrifices of the blood of animals. Those are the only things that had been nailed to the cross, but not the Holy Feast. And maybe you might ask, why is it that Sister White and Betty Hotep did not observe the Holy Feast? Here we can give the clear answer, because God is protecting the typological truths. If Sister White and Betty Hotep will be observing Holy Feast, then the type and antitype will be spoiled. Why? Because during the time when ancient Israel was still in Egyptian bondage, they never observed the Holy Feast. Not until they have been taken by God out of Egypt. That is the time that they observed the Holy Feast. And the Shepherd's Rod made it so plain. I would like to read to you here the statement on 1SR. It says here in 1SR page 115 and 116, the experience of the children of Israel in Egypt, you see, in Egypt, was a photograph of our denomination. Thus, their experience is being reproduced in every particular with these people. You see, it was reproduced in every particular in the life of that denomination, the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And it is very plain in 1SR on page 76, it says here, 1SR page 76, the beginning of this denomination was typified by Israel's entrance into Egypt as previously explained. The land of Goshen stands as a symbol of the United States of America. You see, brothers and sisters, what is the antitypical event that took place when God raised up the Seventh-day Adventist Church? That is typifying when Jacob and all his household enter into Egypt. And what happened after Jacob died? We know that in this instance, Betty Hotep says that Jacob and James has the same significance. I would like to read here on 1SR on page I think 1SR by B.T. Hunter says that the name Jacob type of James, 1SR page 75. Jacob type of James. So it says, it was Jacob in the former and James White in the latter. True it is, but the names Jacob and James are the same. 1SR page 75. Jacob type of James. It was Jacob in the former and James White in the latter. True it is, but the names Jacob and James are the same. 1SR page 75. Now, brothers and sisters, let's go back to our subject because it's very important to understand the shepherd called it the solemn feast. That is very plain in 2TG. It says, let's read again the statement. Because of departure from God, it says, 2TG number 6, page 20 and 21. From these verses, we see that it was just such a departure from God that caused the church in her early Christian era to lose her path and all her possessions, including her feast days, her new moons, her Sabbaths, and all her solemn feasts. Remember the statement, all her solemn feast. It's very important to understand because that is one of the message of the 11th hour message, Nahum 1 verse 15. Keep thy solemn feast. Meaning, that is the fulfillment by which God will restore the Bible calendar. Why? Because God is now commanding His people to observe the solemn feast. Here in Patriarchs and Prophets on page 537, it says, the annual feast. There were 3 annual assemblies of all Israel for worship at the sanctuary. Exodus 23 verse 14 to 16. Shiloh was for a time the place of these gatherings, but Jerusalem afterward became the center of the nation's worship. And here the tribes convened for the solemn feast. So the term solemn feast, both Sister White and B.T. Hotep is directing to the holy feast. And the most important feast, I would like to read answerer number 3 on page 11. It says, and so it is that the Passover, the Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacles, the 3 most important feasts in the year. Answerer number 3, page 11. So, brothers and sisters, that statement in track number 14 on page 22, it says, therefore, only as they awake. Remember, brothers and sisters, the period of time by which that is the time of slumber and sleep is the period represented by the judgment that pertains to the dead, according to the shepherd's rod, right? So the time by which the awakening call will be proclaimed is after the proceedings that pertains to the dead is finished. Now, I would like to read again the statement here in 2SR. Here in 2SR, page 182. Therefore, the tarrying time must be the judgment for the dead, before the bridegroom came to the investigation of the living, in which time the 10 virgins develop. So, that is the time in which they all slumbered and sleep. What time? The judgment that pertains to the dead. But in the judgment that pertains to the living, that is the time by which the awakening call must be proclaimed. And who will proclaim that message? The 11th hour servants. 2TG 43, page 11 and 12. It says, since the announcement of the saints, the separation of the saints from the sinners originate with the 11th hour servants, they are the one who are crying aloud. Isaiah 52 verse 1 and Nahum 1 verse 15. And then it says that without the 11th hour servants and message, the church would be left sleeping forever, never to behold the feet of him who bring these good tidings, and never to be fitted for the kingdom. 2TG 43, page 11 and 12. And Nahum 1 verse 15, the focal point is the solemn feast, and it is even more directing to the Passover, the antitypical Passover. And this is the very message that we are now proclaiming to all the brethren, those who are willing to hear. Our only duty is to proclaim the message, so that the blood of the souls will not be in our hands. But come what may, whatever may happen, the responsibility is entirely upon the almighty power of God. So I would like to read here in track number 14, page 22. It says, therefore only as they awake and give heed to the voice of the true witness, and turn their steps toward the gates of the kingdom, may they ever hope to participate in the divine eventuality. O Judah, keep thy solemn feast, perform thy vows, for the wicked shall no more pass through thee. He is utterly cut off. off. It did not say he will be utterly cut off. But rather, he is utterly cut off. Therefore, Nahum 1 verse 15 must be proclaimed after all the names of the wicked had been blotted out in the Lamb's Book of Life in the heavenly sanctuary. And that's why, to repeat again, in 2TG number 9, page 3, let me read to you. Here in 2TG number 9, page 3, it says, comfort ye my people, saith your God. 2TG 9, page 3. Comfort ye my people, saith your God. Speak ye comfortably to Jerusalem, and cry unto her, that her warfare is finished, that her warfare is accomplished, that her iniquity is pardoned, for she hath received of the Lord's hand double for all her sins. Now, this is the statement given by the shepherd's rod. Inspiration, we see, is her urging someone to comfort God's people. So there is an urgency that such someone had been commanded by God to comfort God's people. Therefore, it is in reality, I do fully believe, to the righteous, it is a comforting message. To let them know that because of their faithfulness, because they faithfully sighed and cried of all the abominations that be done in the church, although in the vision of Sister White, when such blotting out of names is already occurred, the righteous, they did not know, they were unconscious. But the absolute fact is that because of their faithfulness, their names had been retained in the Lamb's Book of Life. Therefore, this messenger is just to inform them. And I cannot see the reason that to the faithful, to the honest, to the sincere, that they will not be comforted with this message. Because this is a comforting message to let them know that their iniquity is pardoned. Now, I would like to read again. It says, 2TG number 9, page 3. Inspiration, we see, is her urging someone to comfort God's people. They are to be told, if they only knew that their iniquity is already pardoned in the heavenly sanctuary, then there is no need for God to raise a messenger to tell them. And the mere fact that they need to be told, indicating that they did not know. And that statement that their iniquity is pardoned, 100%, that is the fulfillment of the vision of Sister White in Testimonies for the Church, Volume 5. Now let me read to you that vision of the prophet in Testimonies for the Church on Volume 5, page 472. It says, Zechariah's vision of Joshua and the angel applies with a peculiar force to the experience of God's people in the closing up of the great day of atonement. In the closing up of the great day of atonement, do not forget, brothers and sisters, that God did not communicate to the entire congregation. He communicated only to Joshua. And it is Joshua who related the story. Now, I would like to read again that statement in the Old Symbolic Code. Although it was taken on the writings of Sister White on 4 Symbolic Code, page 100, Testimonies for the Church, Volume 4, page 162. 3 Symbolic Code, 11 to 12, page 9. 3 Symbolic Code, 11 to 12, page 9. It says, as a people, we lack faith. In these days, few would follow the direction given through God's chosen servant as obediently as did the armies of Israel at the taking of Jericho. The captain of the Lord's host did not reveal himself to all the congregation. He communicated only with Joshua, who related the story of this interview to the Hebrews. It rested with them to believe or to doubt the words of Joshua, to follow the commands given by him in the name of the captain of the Lord's host, to rebel against his direction and deny his authority. Although we know that Zechariah chapter 3, it is Joshua, the son of Josedek. And according to 1TG number 8, it says here, in 1TG number 8 on page 27, 1TG number 8, page 27, it says, Joshua is well instructed that the burden and the ingenuity for building this spiritual temple belongs to him whose name is the branch. He is to grow out of his place. To him be the glory. He alone is to be exalted. He is to build the temple of the Lord. Who have been given the instruction? Joshua. And God did not communicate to the entire congregation, only to Joshua. Now, I would like to read again the statement here in Testimonies for the Church, Volume 5, page 475. It says here, and the remnant are not only pardoned and accepted, but honored. You see, 475 on Volume 5. And the remnant are not only pardoned and accepted, but honored. What a wonderful statement. Hoping that we'll be among that remnant. They are not only pardoned and accepted, but they were also honored by Jesus Christ. And then it says, Volume 5, page 475. And the remnant are not only pardoned and accepted, but honored. And then it says, in the upper portion, it says, their names are retained in the Lamb's Book of Life, enrolled among the faithful of all ages. Volume 5, page 475. So brothers and sisters, the upper portion says, their names have been retained in the Lamb's Book of Life, and they were enrolled among the faithful of all ages. And who are they? The 144,000 living saints. Now, this is the reality. If you faithfully and honestly, the reason that you are sighing and crying, it's so because your desire to be among the 144,000 living saints. Now, concerning the plan of redemption, when the names of the 144,000 living saints had been retained in the Lamb's Book of Life, they themselves, they did not know. Although, because of their faithfulness, their names had been retained in the Lamb's Book of Life. Therefore, who are they that had been blotted out? The unfaithful. Now, here in 1TG number 30, on page 19, it says, 1TG number 30, page 19, Isaiah 4 verse 3, and it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion, and he that remaineth in Jerusalem shall be called holy, even everyone that is written among the living in Jerusalem. Now look at the commentary given by B.T. Hotep. This verse clearly shows that while none of the wicked in the church will survive the purification, yet none of the righteous will perish. And who are they whose names have been retained in the Lamb's Book of Life? 1TG number 6, page 38, it says, Isaiah 4 verse 3, and it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion, and he that remaineth in Jerusalem, shall be called holy, even everyone that is written among the living in Jerusalem. And then it says, only the holy ones, those whose names are left written in the book, escape the destruction that falls upon the wicked in the church. Only they constitute the remnant, the ones that are left. Therefore, Isaiah 4 verse 3 is directly pointing to the heavenly sanctuary, the last and the final blotting out of names, by which in 1TG number 11, page 11, it says, so only those who survive the judgment for the living in the house of God, 1 Peter chapter 4 verse 17, those whose names are not blotted out from the book, Revelation 3 verse 5, will comprise the church, among whom are to be 144,000 sons of Jacob. 1TG number 11, page 11. So this is the sequence of events that the faithful, the honest, the sincere, because of their faithfulness, because of their sincerity, their names had been retained in the Lamb's Book of Life. Although we did not know who they are, but for sure 100%, they were 144,000 in number, as stated in the Spur prophecy. And it says they were scattered throughout the whole world. 1 SR 222, without a shepherd, but they did not bow their knee to Baal. And immediately after such event, blotting out of names, God commanded someone to comfort God's people. Therefore, to the faithful, there is a responding chord in their hearts. It is a good news to them, to inform them that their iniquity is pardoned. Why is it that they need to be informed that their iniquity is pardoned? Because the focal point, I would like to read here in 1TG, it says here in 1TG number 36, on page 3, comfort ye, my people. Isaiah 40 verse 1 and 2. Comfort ye, my people, saith your God. Speak ye comfortably to Jerusalem, and cry unto her that her warfare is accomplished, that her iniquity is pardoned, for she hath received of the Lord's hand double for all her sins. It says, verse 2 leaves no doubt that inspiration is speaking to a people in the latter days, the days in which the warfare, pilgrimage, and captivity of God's weary people are accomplished. having received double for their sin and rebellion, their iniquity is pardoned and are now soon to be delivered. So the focal point is the deliverance, to inform them that the year of deliverance has actually come. In 1 TG number 37, on page 10, it says, their divine calling to awake. 1 TG number 37, page 10, their divine calling to awake, however, reveals that though the time of deliverance has come, yet they are in deep spiritual sleep, ignorant of these good tidings. Brethren, the same with Moses. He came to the people of God, saying, this is the year by which we will go home. It is very plain in answerer number 2. It says here in page 6, not purposing, however, to leave them there forever, the Lord did not let their living continue as pleasant as at the first, lest they refused to take heed to Moses when he should come with the word that the time had arrived for them to go back home. The time had arrived for them to go back home. The Voice of Inspiration says in 1 TG number 25, page 4, 1 TG 25, page 4, and still more joyful should she now be to learn that the time for her returning to God and to the homeland has actually come. Brothers and sisters, we are now on the very year by which we will go home. We will return to the kingdom. Let us wholeheartedly return to the Lord. According to that reading in 1 TG 25, page 4, it is the time to have a total surrender. I remember that statement in White House Recruiter. On page 10, to be sure, the few who arouse, White House Recruiter, page 10. To be sure, though the few who do arouse to make the total surrender which the hour demands, God will save from the conflagration to come. You see, to be sure, though the few who do arouse to make the total surrender which the hour demands, God will save from the conflagration to come. It is high time now, brethren, to realize that anything outside the kingdom, it is only a swine husk. It says here in 1 TG number 1, page 8, 1 TG number 1, page 8, for all, it says, for all must be brought to realize that everything away from the garden is nothing more than swine husk. 1 TG number 1, page 8, for all must be brought to realize that everything away from the garden is nothing more than swine husk. We are now on the very year by which we will return to the kingdom. And that is the reason why God bestowed unto us infallible fruits, brothers and sisters, because so that none of us need ear. Look at in the days of Moses, there was no Bible. How could they ascertain clearly that what Moses said is really true? So our days is even more favorable than in the days of Moses, than in the days of Abraham. Why? Because we have a basis of our faith. We can prove exactly the year of deliverance by the evidences that had been given by God in the Bible, for prophecy and the Shepherd's Rod publications. What we need to do is only to study, because God provided unto us infallible proofs. The Voice of Inspiration says in 2 TG number 31, page 3, shall this returning be unexpected? No, because God will send first His servant to inform God's people. The Bible is very plain in Hosea 12, verse 13. God take out His people from Egypt by a prophet. And the Shepherd's Rod declared clearly that, brothers and sisters, God will employ the same method. That is very plain here in 6 Symbolic Code, number 1 to 6, page 10. 6 Symbolic Code, number 1 to 6, page 10. In both the Old and the New Testaments, there is brought to view a religious movement organized and led by the author of the Scriptures, the first of which is an example or type of the second. Both of these movements called God's people out of a state of bondage with specific instruction as to how those comprising the organization might free themselves from slavery and inherit a land of freedom, peace, and plenty. Now all these things happen unto them for examples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. Thus the Exodus movement, the type from Egypt to Canaan, points forward to a movement which the Lord is to launch by the same method as in the type, and which is to free God's people from all earthly ties, sin and sinners, and lead them to inherit the eternal kingdom. The same method, according to this reading, in 6 Symbolic Code, 1 to 6, on page 10. I remember that statement. If you can locate that, God did not send powerful army or a monarch to deliver God's people from Egyptian bondage, but the means is very simple. Simple means. Just an ordinary man, Moses, together with the rod. And that's the method that God employed, brothers and sisters. I remember the statement here on Pure Symbolic Code, number 10 to 12, page 5 and page 6. It says, in the days when Pharaoh reigned over God's people, Pure Symbolic Code 10 to 12, page 5, in the days when Pharaoh reigned over God's people, the Lord did not send a great army. No, God did not send battalion of army, led by a general trained in the school of the world, to set them free and to give him a chance to rule over them. But he sent Moses, the simple means, with his shepherd's rod. Simple means. And I would like to read a portion here in Pure Symbolic Code 10 to 12, page 6. The Lord will work in no less miraculous a manner now to free his people from being ruled by a worldly organization. He will command the work himself in the same manner as he did in Moses and David's day. For Symbolic Code 10 to 12, page 6. On page 6, it says, the Lord will work in no less miraculous a manner now to free his people from being ruled by a worldly organization. He will command the work himself in the same manner as he did in Moses and David's day. When God delivered his people from Egyptian bondage, is at that time Moses has an organized church? No, there was no organized church. It was Moses alone with his rod, with the rod of God, the rod which is the symbol of the power of God. Ponder deeply, brothers and sisters. The same in the days of David, when David delivered God's people from the giant Goliath. So all those things only reminding us that in the last work, God will work very contrary to all human planning. Although the reason that God will work in a very contrary to all human planning, because God already demonstrated in the past that organized movement, brothers and sisters, always lead to have a very proud spirit, boasting. And that is the reason why God used only very simple means. So, to repeat again, brothers and sisters, we can prove to you, absolutely, with concrete evidence, and even the proof is infallible, to show to you that this is the year of deliverance. But what we are trying to do is that we are pleading to see the matter, to study closely, brothers and sisters. Because if you will only sit down and study closely, I fully believe that there is no reason that you will reject the message, because we guaranteed to you that this message is exclusively supported by the word it is written, barricaded by a thus saith the Lord. And to repeat again, the proof is even infallible. And since the proof is infallible, I remember that statement that is it in 11 Symbolic Code, by which it says, those who will fail to obtain this knowledge, God will destroy them without mercy. It says in 11 Symbolic Code number 7, page 22, it says, there is something fundamentally wrong with this class of people, because God is able to make anyone wise. He can make anyone strong. His truth is so simple that though they be fools, they need not err therein. Isaiah 35 verse 8. Therefore, all can get understanding. For this reason, those men who get no understanding, God will destroy without mercy. 11 Symbolic Code, number 7, page 22. And look at how simple. The revelation is so simple, because very small number that God revealed the entire plan of redemption. Just number 40. I think even elementary or grade 1 or grade 2 know how to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. Just number 40. God revealed the entire plan of redemption. The other one is 30, more lesser than the number 40. So it's easy. And the only reason that we could not be able to comprehend, I know, it's so because of prejudice. There are many who because of prejudice will never know the truth. According to Testimonies for the Church, Volume 6, 314. And even here in the old symbolic code, 2 symbolic code number 11, page 8, 2 symbolic code number 11, page 8, this experience will awaken them as if startled out of their dreams and will enable them to receive the power of the Spirit and to put on the beautiful garments of Christ's righteousness, which give by the prophet's pleading he is urging us to receive. So Isaiah 52 verse 1, we read that several times that according to 2 symbolic code 9, page 9, is addressed to the 144,000. The call in the antitype, Isaiah 52:1, is to the 144,000. And the servant of the Lord is urging, because in track number 6, God just winked their ignorance of that last and final day of atonement in the holy place, blotting out of names. God regarded only us such fully to their ignorance, according to track number 6. Let me read to you, page 73. It says, rather than raising your voices against the truth, raise them in praises of it and of the Lord, for He has charged you fully to your ignorance of the truth. If you return to Him at this final warning, this is the last final warning message. If you return to Him at this final warning, He will gladly receive you and command His servants to clothe you with His best robe, Christ's righteousness, Isaiah 52:1. And that is the pleading of the prophet according here in 2 symbolic code 11, page 8. 2 symbolic code number 11, page 8, it says, this experience will awaken them as if startled out of their dreams and will enable them to receive the power of the Spirit and to put on the beautiful garments of Christ's righteousness, which gift by the prophet's pleading, he is urging us to receive, Isaiah 52:1. And in the writings of Alonzo Jones, that is the power of forgiveness. Every time, every now and then, when Jesus Christ performed miracle in the New Testament, after He cured the disease, He always declared, Son, thy sins are forgiven. And because of that words of Jesus Christ, when they heard that words, Alonzo Jones says, there is power of forgiveness. So by faith, we are now informing the power of forgiveness to let all the faithful Seventh-day Adventists, faithful Davidian, because of our faithfulness of sighing and crying, here is the word, Son, all thy sins have been forgiven. All our iniquity is pardoned, and we are soon to be delivered by God. And that is the righteousness of Christ to be imputed in our behalf. Imputed righteousness. So it says here, 2 symbolic code 11, page 8, He is urging us to receive Isaiah 52:1. However, no one with prejudice and self-confidence can ever come to the knowledge of the truth. 2 symbolic code number 11, page 8. We will continue this subject on our next episode. We love you, brethren, and forgive me, apology, anything that came out from my mouth if it is not pleasant to your ear. And if you think that it is not appropriate for me to say those words, I only accept those messages that I have read. The word it is written, which is the word of God. Because my only desire is each one of us be prepared of such great deliverance. And that time is no longer far distant. So hoping, brethren, that we will see happily in God's kingdom. The only place by which we could live happily. No more tears, no more worriness. And that is the only place that we desire. Thank you very much for listening and viewing this program. May the good Lord bless you and have a beautiful, wonderful evening.